السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما نافعا. آمين. We are discussing about al-Shakk, doubt, as an epistemological principle in nurturing knowledge and reaching certainty. The strand of doubt or the method of doubt which was pursued by the Western philosophers is not the main strand in the making of Western civilization, but rather it was used as a method of research. It was used as a method of ta'akkud and fahs. So the beginning was with understanding the role of aql in reaching certainty. And from the different intellectual methods, aqli methods, the role of doubt in cultivating knowledge. And after that, they took a leap to understanding the limits of aql. So this is not the only methodology adopted by the Western philosophers in the construction of Western civilization. We said in the previous session that one of the main Western philosophers who took this position and used doubt as a very important epistemological principle is René Descartes. And he is known as the father of modern Western philosophy. But there are other thinkers and philosophers who came after him. They agreed with him in some matters, disagreed in other matters. So this line was pursued by the Western civilization in order to make it as a base of cultivating and nurturing knowledge. And there are other strands. Inshallah, we'll discuss about it when we do a comparative analysis between René Descartes and Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah. We started with understanding the meaning of doubt in our own legacy, in Islamic turath. And for that, we took a very important hadith, which is explicit in explaining doubt. The hadith of Shakk, we can call it the hadith of Shakk, about the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in order to understand this hadith, we refer to some very important shuruhat, explanations of the hadith literature. We took the best opinions in order to carve the meanings of doubt or different shades of meaning from Islamic perspective. We had talked about three meanings. And sometimes we directly read from the original sources. This is to encourage us and acknowledge our scholarship or engage with the original scholarship directly. So we will pursue this manhaj of understanding the meanings, different meanings of Shakk first, and then we will move to its epistemological value. We had stopped here at the third meaning. Let me repeat this briefly. The first meaning is ziyadatu yaqinin wa quwwatu tuma'nina, increase in certainty and strengthening tranquility. And this is from Imam al-Qadi Iyad, rahimahullah, a great Maliki scholar, from his work al-Shifa fi Huquq al-Mustafa. The second meaning is انتقال من اعتقاد إلى اعتقاد آخر, moving from one belief to stronger belief, which is supported by more definitive evidences in order to reach certainty. This stronger belief is free from doubt. We talked about the details. This is from Imam al-Maziri, again a great Maliki scholar, al-Mu'lim bi fawaidi Sahih Muslim. The third meaning is at-taraqi min ilm al-yaqini ila ayn al-yaqin. Elevation from ilm al-yaqin to ayn al-yaqin, or knowing, after knowing something based on demonstrative evidence, burhan, to knowing it directly or experiencing it directly. There was a question in the last session asked by a brother about sensory perception. When we say that experiencing something directly, aynul yaqeen, is better than ilmul yaqeen, experiencing it or knowing it based on demonstrative evidences or any other evidences, aren't we falling into the same mistake committed by the modern Western civilization, which confines knowledge in sensory perception? Or aren't we at least saying that sensory perception is better than the knowledge which is based on demonstrative evidences? Because Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he understood the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in giving life to the dead based on wahi, which is a definitive evidence, he wanted to experience it directly by his senses, which means sensory perception is better than other evidences. This is a mistake. Yani if we adopt this position, it will be a mistake, because what Ibrahim alayhi salam saw or experienced is not sensory perception technically. We can call it advanced sensory perception, which is definitive. Because the rationalist philosophers, beginning with René Descartes, they doubted the knowledge based on sensory perception. They doubted knowledge based on the traditional evidences, including the sensory perception. And this is the position of Imam al-Ghazali also in al-Munqidh min al-Dalal and other works. Knowledge based on sensory perception is not definitive, because senses sometimes can mislead. So what can mislead sometimes can mislead always. Those who made doubt a principle or a foundation for knowledge, they agreed on the fact that sensory perception cannot lead to certainty. That's why what Ibrahim alayhi salam requested from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what we are discussing here, is not sensory perception per se. It is advanced sensory perception, you can call it, or you can give it any other name. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts the wheels, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants quwwah, power to the senses in order to experience realities which are beyond the normal sensory perception. So it is not normal sensory perception. Otherwise, everyone would be able to experience this reality. But this is not the case. For this reason, we call it mu'jiza, a miracle, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts the wheels. Okay, so what Ibrahim alayhi salam perceived and what we are discussing here is not normal sensory perception, because normal sensory perception of a common man is speculative. We will inshallah discuss about this in details. Sensory perception does not lead to definitive knowledge. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts the wheels, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants quwwah to the senses in order to perceive higher realities, this is definitive source of knowledge. We can call it advanced sensory perception or any other name, inshallah. Elevation from ilmul yaqeen to ainul yaqeen, or what is known based on demonstrative evidence to what is known based on direct advanced sensory experience. The fourth meaning of doubt, which we can understand based on this hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ used the word or the term shakk directly. But we have said that the scholars agree that this term al-Shakk is not in the ordinary meaning of shakk, or it will not be taken on apparent meaning. That's why some scholars, they say this term in the hadith, it is used in allegorical meaning, al-majaz. And we pointed to that. The fourth meaning of al-Shakk, and again, to remind ourselves, we are talking about creative shakk. We are not talking about normal doubt, in which a person is not able to decide what is right and wrong. We're talking about shakk as an epistemological tool or principle in order to reach certainty. Inshallah, we'll explain more. The fourth meaning is at-tafawut. At-tafawut bayna al-imani wal-itminan. The subtle difference between iman and tranquility. So iman is of course based on tranquility. But when a person yearns for more tranquility in his iman by studying better evidences in order to reach al-iman al-mutma'in, which is called yaqeen in terminology, because iman and yaqeen, they can be translated as belief. But when iman is advanced and it becomes more firm, we call it yaqeen or tuma'nina. This tafawut, this difference or this yearning for elevation is the doubt mentioned in the hadith. This can be the fourth meaning of doubt. And basically, after understanding these meanings and the details, we have to cultivate this doubt as a Muslim. These meanings and methods, we have to cultivate it in order to enhance our iman, and we can use it as a method to understand knowledge and to nurture knowledge further. We have this definition from Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah in Majmu'atul Fatawa, volume 15, page 178. He says, in explanation of the hadith, he says, فَالتَّفَاوُتُ بَيْنَ الْإِيمَانِ وَالْإِتْمِنَانِ, the subtle difference or elevation between iman and tranquility, سَمَّاهُ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ شَكًّا. This is what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called doubt. So by doubt, the Prophet does not mean the normal doubt. He meant this tafawut, this subtle elevation or difference. Okay, so this can be the fourth meaning of doubt. The fifth meaning of doubt, we can take it from the explanation of Al-Imam Al-Hafidh Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani rahimahullah, the great muhaddith, in explanation of this hadith in his great work Fathul Bari. So after explaining the hadith and mentioning other opinions which we already know, he says doubt in this hadith can mean tadhahurul adillah. Tadhahurul adillah, the support of the evidences. After understanding a matter based on one evidence, seeking and yearning for more supportive evidences to reach tranquility. Okay. For this reason, you will see the scholars in the ilm of fiqh sometimes, after mentioning an evidence for a mas'ala from the Quran or Sunnah, they support it by ijma'. So after mentioning the ayah or hadith, they say there is ijma', consensus on this mas'ala. There are other reasons for this method. We will not go into that, but sometimes it is to support the mas'ala as a supportive evidence to reach more tranquility. So he says, in the explanation of this hadith, Ibn Hajar rahimullah says, تظاهر الأدلة أسكن للقلوب. أسكن للقلوب. The support of the evidences, yani having more than one evidence to prove a matter, is more, gives more tranquility to the hearts. Okay, so this is another meaning of doubt mentioned in the hadith. So doubt does not mean rejecting a mas'ala or rejecting something. You have accepted it, but you are seeking more evidences for the same in order to make this knowledge firm in your heart, so that doubt cannot shake it. Okay. For this reason, in the science of ilm al-kalam, you will see the scholars say that this science is, in principle, it is fardu kifaya. It is a communal obligation. It is not obligatory on every Muslim to understand this science, to understand the aqaid based on rational evidences. But it is fardu kifaya. There should be scholars in the community who understand this science. And what is the primary purpose for that? The primary reason for that is so that we have scholars who can clear the doubts of the masses, who can respond, who can give responses to those who create doubts about Islam and the aqaid of Islam. And if we don't have, like, the janazah prayer is fardu kifaya. If some Muslims perform it, others are relieved of sin. But if we have a Muslim who died and no one is there to pray his janazah prayer in a particular community, and they have the capability, they're all sinful, because there will be a mashaqqa, a hardship. In the same way, if we have a community of Muslims, particularly in our times, when we have this information explosion, social networking, everyone is exposed to different ideologies and doubts and whatnot. If we don't have scholars who are well versed in ilm al-kalam, who can respond to these doubts and clear these doubts from the minds of the Muslims, there will be mashaqqa. And this is one of the reasons that we have in some Muslim societies, we have atheism and Muslims inclining to all types of false ideologies, because we don't have scholars who have updated themselves. They understand the legacy and also the current times and can respond to the doubts. So tadahur al-adillah is important. Okay, so the meaning of doubt is to elevate or to desire for more tranquility, which is done by understanding and studying more adillah. For this reason, the scholars of ilm al-kalam, if you read any work, basic text in ilm al-kalam, they have discussed about this important mas'ala, which they call awwalu wajibin ala al-mukallaf, the first obligation on a Muslim, on a mukallaf, when he reaches the age of puberty, he becomes legally responsible. What is the first obligation on him? There is disagreement, but sometimes this disagreement is only ikhtilaf in terminology. If you reflect, they all mean the same thing. So some scholars, they say the first obligation is, of course, ma'rifatullah, knowledge of Allah. And some others, they say the first obligation is another reflection, which means the same thing, ma'rifatullah, based on evidences. Because when you study your religion, particularly aqaid, based on evidences, and you understand the why aspect of your deen, your iman will be more firm and you will be protected from doubts. But if you base your aqidah on taqleed, on blind imitation, because you were born in a Muslim family, in a Muslim society, you're a Muslim, you're believing in the basic aqaid, God is one, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last and final messenger, belief in akhirah, angels, so on and so forth. And you don't know the evidences, you don't know the different types of evidences, particularly the rational evidences, you're exposed to doubt. A small doubt can destroy the whole structure of your belief system. Okay, that the doubt which crept into your heart may be worthless, but because of your ignorance and weak iman, you fell into the trap. For this reason, they talk about at-taqleed in aqaid, blind imitation in aqaid. And there are many scholars who declared it haram. They said this is haram. Aqidah should be based on evidences. And this has been narrated from even Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, yani muhaddith, who was inclined to more hadith-based methodology. Okay, taqleed in aqaid. What is the ruling on iman of a muqallid? A Muslim who bases his belief system on taqleed, blind imitation. He does not study it, does not know the evidences. They discuss this because he's more prone to doubt, or he is more prone to, he's more exposed to doubts. A small doubt can destroy his iman. Okay, so tadahur al-adillah is another important meaning of doubt from Islamic perspective. Yani, we are only taking it from one hadith and the different explanations of the scholars for this hadith. Another important meaning of doubt can be taraju'ul afkar. Taraju'ul afkar. After believing in something, understanding something based on evidences, and we can call it number 6, we should still keep the room for doubt. Of course, as a Muslim, not in the basics of our religion, but the branches of our religion, which are based on adhan. Dhan is the main principle or the foundation on which the furu, the branches of both aqidah and the fiqh is based. One of the disastrous mistakes which some modern Muslim movements have done is that they search for certainty in an area of Islam which is based on al-dhan. Like, for example, al-fiqh, the practical ahkam, they're based on dhan. For this reason, we have the institution of al-ijtihad. Ijtihad keeps our religion vibrant. Ijtihad is performed in the texts which are dhanni, dhanniyu dilala. And this is one of the basic lessons in usul al-fiqh, that the texts of our deen, Quran and Sunnah, are of two types. When we talk about dilala, when we talk about the meaning, probability of more than one meaning, we have qat'i dilala and dhanni dilala. We have texts which are definitive. They don't have probability of more than one meaning. And we have texts which are dhanni dilala, probability of more than one meaning. And this is the scheme of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has revealed these texts according to this particular tabi'ah and nature. If Allah willed, Allah could reveal the texts which would be only definitive. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is also the nature of the Arabic language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected for the last and final revelation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected the Arabic language. Arabic language is the most vast from all the languages. That's why Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he says in Ar-Risala that لا يحيط بها إلا نبي. No one can encompass Arabic language except a prophet. It is so vast. And some linguistic scholars claim that the Semitic languages are basically the branches of the Arabic language. They are lahajat of the Arabic language, including Hebrew. I heard a great scholar of Morocco saying that al-Ibriyatu ukhtul Arabiya. The Hebrew is sister of Arabic language, a branch of Arabic language. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the last and final revelation in Arabic because of the nature of the Arabic language also. Arabic language is vast. One letter has probability of many meanings because this religion would be based on ijtihad. Ijtihad will continue till the last day. And this would keep our religion vibrant. Otherwise, how can limited texts solve unlimited problems? We Muslims claim that Islam is for eternity. Islam is a solution till the end times. And we have limited texts. Ayat are limited. And every ayah does not speak about the practical ahkam directly. We have limited ahadith. How can limited ayat solve unlimited problems till the last day? The answer is al-ijtihad. Because each word in the Quran, every ayah and hadith has probability of more than one meaning. So seeking certainty in an area which is based on dhann, speculation, is a grave mistake in intellectual methodology. And basing an area which is based on certainty, like the basic aqaid of Islam, on speculation, on a dhann, is also a very serious mistake. So this is what has happened. Ijtihad, which is a great institution and methodology in Islamic law in particular, and generally Islam, which keeps our religion vibrant, is based on tarajul afkar. Ijtihad is not only in new problems, which did not exist before, economical, political, social, whatever. Ijtihad can be done in the problems which were solved in history by our scholars. So if we have, for example, the four imams and other great scholars who gave their opinions in the matters of religion, can we revisit these opinions? We can. We can perform a new ijtihad. It is not a problem, but there are conditions, of course. The scholars have talked about the different types of ijtihad. We have ijtihad mutlaq and ijtihad muqayyad. Has ijtihad mutlaq ended? Or it can also be performed. I will not go into that. But the point here is tarajul afkar, revisiting the afkar, revisiting our methodologies, revisiting our opinions, and keeping ijtihad vibrant is one of the meanings of doubt. And if you consider a particular opinion definitive, you will never doubt it, you will never revisit it. If you consider a particular methodology final, you will never relook into it. Okay, so this is a very important mas'ala. It is one of the meanings of doubt. Here we can talk about the importance of al-khayal. We can call it creative imagination. Khayal in Arabic means imagination. Khayal has been used as a tool for nurturing knowledge by both mutakallimun in the science of ilm al-kalam and التصوف, the field of tasawwuf, creative imagination. And for example, we have people who are gifted by Allah with this quality of creative imagination. And you have an old piece of jeans, they can tell you, how can we turn it into a bag? How can we turn it into something useful? You have old furniture, they can show you how can we recycle it, make it something which benefits you instead of throwing it away. Creative imagination. But the mistake which we commit here is we limit creative imagination to only material things. And interior designing, engineering, all these fields are based on creative imagination. Take the example of intelligence, investigation. It's all based on the faculty of khayal, which is an inner faculty. It is not from the five senses, it is an inner faculty. And when an investigating officer sits with the criminal and he has a methodology of asking certain questions in order to reach the reality of the crime, this is all creative imagination. It is not a cup of tea for everyone. Okay, same applies on interior designing, engineering, new researchers. We have people who are experts of their field and they have been gifted with this quality of khayal. The only mistake which we do is we limit it to material things. If creative imagination, al-khayal, is helpful and useful in material things, it can be more useful in intellectual activity. The creative imagination of philosophers is more profound than the creative imagination of, say, investigating officers, interior designers, for example. But we don't usually take this into consideration. So the quality of creative imagination, al-khayal, using it in nurturing knowledge. Creative imagination is also one of the meanings of doubt. Yani if you have a pair of jeans and old pair of jeans, and you're certain now that this has become old, it is of no use to me, and you have reached certainty in this matter, you will throw it off, you will waste it. But this person who has been gifted with creative imagination, he doubts this belief that this pair of jeans is of no use because it has become old. He doubts this belief. He thinks, he uses creative imagination, al-khayal, to make it something else which can be useful. Same applies on all other fields. And we see the videos of people making cars and gadgets out of old things and so on and so forth. For a person who has not been gifted with this quality, he may be certain that this particular old junk or anything is of no use to me. But when a person sees it, he sees it from a different perspective. So he doubts that it cannot be used. This is one of the meanings of doubt. And this creative imagination, al-khayal, was used in the best way by the Muslim scholars in different fields. Take the example of al-fiqh and usul al-fiqh, how they developed the methodology of ijtihad, usul al-fiqh, in understanding the ahkam of Islam. For example, one of the greatest fuqaha and legal minds in our history is Imam al-Juwayni, rahimahullah. He is a great mind in fiqh and usul al-fiqh. One of his best works in usul al-fiqh is al-Burhan. Al-Burhan fi usul al-fiqh. But there are some works which even people who are who study usul al-fiqh, maybe they are not aware of that particular book because it is about a different topic. But sometimes a book cannot be it is written by the same scholar on a different topic, but he uses the methodology or his creative imagination in that book also. For example, the book of Imam al-Juwayni in As-Siyasa al-Shar'iyyah, the political theory, al-Ghiyathi, Ghiyath al-Umam fi Tiyath al-Dhulam. He wrote this work for the famous wazir, minister of the Seljuk Empire, Nizam al-Mulk. And this work is about As-Siyasa al-Shar'iyyah, political theory, how to run a state, what are the conditions for a ruler. But in that work, in the last fusul, Imam al-Juwayni talks about usul al-fiqh and connects it with political theory. For example, he imagines a time when Khilafah is no more. Khilafah does not exist. How will Muslims follow their religion in those times? He says they will follow the scholars. If the political leadership is destroyed, they will still follow the religious leadership. They will follow the ijtihadat of the scholars. And then again, he imagines if even the religious scholarship is destroyed and we don't have anyone to guide us in the branches of religion. We don't have anyone to teach us how to pray, how to fast, how to perform Hajj, how to run a state, how to establish Islam, family system. We don't have. What will the Muslims do? He says they will have the usul. If they lost the furu', the branches of religion, they will still have the usul. They will apply the principles of religion. And there he talks about al-maslaha, al-mafsada, and all these concepts which are from the basic principles of usul al-fiqh. So all this methodology and methodologies, usul al-hadith, it was all based on this faculty of al-khayal, creative imagination. If the scholars had satisfied themselves with the basics of the texts only, they would never produce such methodologies. So creative imagination is also a form of doubt. And in this creative imagination, there is a particular, we can call it another faculty which is used, which the scholars call al-wahm. Al-wahm. Wahm, if we literally translate it, means confusion. And wahm can be translated as confusion as well as doubt. But here, wahm again means productive doubt, which is the foundation of al-khayal. The scholars, they say al-wahm, they define wahm as al-quwwa al-aqaliyya. This is the problem of translations. We should understand our religion in original Arabic, because sometimes the terms cannot be translated. Every term translated is a term distorted. They say al-wahmu al-quwwatu al-aqliyya. It is an intellectual potential, or al-hassa min al-hawas al-batina, or it is a faculty from the inner faculties. So we have al-hawas al-zahira, the outer faculties, the five senses, and we have inner faculties. It is an aqli potential, intellectual potential, or quwwa of the aql, or a hassa, a faculty from the inner faculties, تضيف المعاني للصور الحسية, which attributes meaning to what we perceive by the five senses, to the sensory perception. For example, as a child, when we see a dog outside our house barking, or we see a dog outside, dog is a reality which can be perceived by five senses. Barking can also be perceived by five senses. We can hear this, but the fear is something beyond five senses. Yani fear is a ma'na. It is a meaning which is ingrained in the conscience of a human being. So when a child sees this dog always outside his house, barking maybe in the night, he becomes fearful of this dog. And he connects this meaning, or he attributes this meaning of fear to the barking of the dog or to the dog itself. This is this is what the faculty of Waham does. Waham, it attributes meaning to the sensory perception. Now, whenever this child sees a dog, any dog, he will be fearful from it. Maybe this dog is not barking at this child, but he will be fearful. Maybe this dog is a different dog anywhere. Now this child goes to a different place, and there he sees another dog of a different color. The first dog was black, this second dog is white. He will still be fearful from this dog. Okay, so he will not realize that this second dog is a different dog. Maybe the first dog was barking at him, the second dog, maybe this dog is friendly, or he's not barking at him. This dog belongs to a different place. This dog has a different color. He will not realize this. He will still attribute the same meaning to the second dog also, which is fear. He'll be fearful. This is what Waham does. That's why they call it Waham. Confusion or doubt, because it is not true always. Okay, so for this reason they say min sha'nil wahmi at-ta'mim. From what Waham, this faculty, inner faculty, does is ta'mim, generality of attribution. So now this child, whenever he sees any dog in any place on earth, he'll be fearful. He will attribute fear to the dog, whatever be its color, whatever be its shape, whether it's small or big. This is ta'mim. He will apply the meaning with generality. So this is one of the this is what Waham does. It attributes meaning to sensory perception. I gave the example of child because in a child, the faculties of a child are not fully developed. But when we talk about philosopher, like we gave the example of interior designer. When he enters your house, he may see the structure of the house from a different perspective. Yani his eyes are the same eyes, your eyes are the same eyes. A person who turned a pair of old jeans into a bag, he has the same outer qualities, he has the same eyes, but his perception is different, his inner perception. He sees this pair of old jeans from a different perspective. You also saw this pair of jeans, but you were not able to imagine the bag. But this person who saw the same pair of old jeans, he was able to turn it into a bag because of his creative imagination, which is based on Waham. Now his Waham is more developed and advanced because he's an interior designer, or he's a designer, or he's a scientist, he's an expert of his field, he's a philosopher, he's a thinker. Okay, the Waham of the child is mistaken, is speculative Waham, we can call it, or underdeveloped Waham, because the faculties of the child are not fully developed. So the Waham or khayal will always be based, or the purity of al-khayal and Waham will always be based on the person who is engaging in this khayal and Waham. If he's a child, it may be mistaken. If he's a scientist, if he's a painter, for example, he's a philosopher, he's a great thinker, his Waham and khayal will be, of course, better than others. It will be developed. This is another meaning of doubt. And this is a very profound meaning. More you work on your khayal and waham, on your creative imagination, I'm sure there must be works on this topic, on particular creative imagination. More you work on it, more you can produce the knowledge in your field. But as I said, limiting it to material things is a mistake. Okay, like for example, we use the word creative for an engineer or a painter, but we don't use the same word for a philosopher, for a thinker. We don't say he's a creative thinker. Maybe we use, but not so commonly. Okay, you can read more about al-khayal and waham. Yani, this is what we have. We have profound legacy, but the problem is we don't have deserving people who can engage with this legacy. The last meaning of doubt is al-Shakk al-Ijabi. We can call it al-Shakk al-Ijabi, productive doubt or positive doubt, or al-Shakk al-Khallaq, al-Shakk al-Khallaq, creative doubt. This will be the last meaning of doubt. So in this, it is important to understand the reasons or intellectual and psychological reasons in the development of ulum. What are the intellectual and psychological methods and reasons to develop productive doubt or creative doubt? Okay, this is what our scholars, this is the meaning to which they point in their works when they say doubts are the foundations of knowledge, or doubts take us to the truth. Okay, for example, we have, I will read from the work of Imam al-Ghazali, Mizan al-Amal. In the last paragraph of this book, Mizan al-Amal, he says about doubt, we can call it creative doubt. He says that doubts are the foundations of truth, or doubts take us to knowledge and haqq. Imam al-Ghazali, and from this, the scholars have said that Imam al-Ghazali, he preceded René Descartes in turning doubt into an epistemological foundation for knowledge. And even the muhaqqiq, the editor of this work, has pointed to this in the footnote. He says this is a golden paragraph which explains the methodology of Imam al-Ghazali in reaching to truth, certain truth or ultimate truth. And whoever reflects on this will realize that what has been attributed to René Descartes and his philosophical manhaj methodology, Imam al-Ghazali had discovered it many centuries before René Descartes. And he says this in the footnotes. Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, says in Mizan al-Amal, the last paragraph, he says, الشكوك هي الموصلة إلى الحق. Shukuk take us to the truth. فمن لم يشكك ويشك لم ينظر. Because if a person does not doubt or does not adopt doubt as a methodology, لم ينظر, he will never reflect. And if you don't doubt, you don't yearn for more knowledge, you don't want to understand more evidences, you don't consider your opinion dhanni, speculative, and you're not ready to revisit and relook into your opinion, all the meanings which we explained, you will never reflect, or you will never tread the path of reflection and understanding knowledge. فَمَنْ لَمْ يُشَكِّكْ وَيَشُكَّ, for whoever does not doubt, لَمْ يَنْظُرْ, he will never reflect. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَنْظُرْ, and the one who never reflects, لَمْ يُبْصِرْ, he will never be able to understand. وَمَنْ لَمْ يُبْصِرْ, and the one who does not understand, بَقِيَ فِي الْعَمَى وَالضَّلَالِ, he will always remain in blindness and blindness and misguidance. Na'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. We seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan. Wassalam. These are golden words of Imam al-Ghazali from Mizanul Amal. And he based his another work on this principle, or the explanation of this principle, which is al-Munqidh min al-Dalal. We'll talk about it when we compare him with René Descartes. And I read somewhere to prove, we will compare inshallah, and it will become manifest that René Descartes took it, or at least he was influenced by Imam al-Ghazali in his philosophy of doubt. But I read somewhere that they discovered, because the translations of al-Munqidh min al-Dalal were available in 16th and 17th century Europe, the Latin translations of al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, deliverance from the error. And as I said, I read somewhere that they found a copy of al-Munqidh min al-Dalal in personal library of René Descartes in Paris. So this is a very clear evidence for the influence of Imam al-Ghazali on him. And some scholars have called this ibara of Imam al-Ghazali nazgha i'tizaliyah, an influence of Mu'tazilis on Imam al-Ghazali, because it was the Mu'tazila scholars who for the first time used doubt as an epistemological principle. And this is true. This is true. I have here qawl of a famous Mu'tazili scholar, al-Imam al-Jahidh, who was a great scholar in Arabic literature. And his scholarship is accepted by everyone. Al-Imam al-Jahidh, he was a scholar of 3rd century. And this is early 2nd and 3rd century after Hijrah. René Descartes is in 17th century Christian era. So imagine, he in his one of his works, Al-Hayawan, he talks about Shakk, and then he quotes some of his teachers, Mu'tazila teachers, about this mas'ala. It is said that the Mu'tazila, they based their methodology on Shakk. We talked about the famous question of mutakallimin. Ma huwa awwalu wajibin ala al-mukallaf? What is the first obligation on a mukallaf? Mu'tazila said al-Shakk, doubt. And those who refuted them, they did not understand this statement. This is a big problem when we don't understand a particular thought from its original sources. And even in our times, most of the works of Mu'tazila have not reached us, only some works. So we don't understand Hanafi madhab from a book of a Hanbali scholar. We don't understand Shafi'i madhab, for example, from a book of Maliki scholar. This is wrong methodology. We go to the original sources. So there are, in Islamic polemics, refutations on each other, this is a very common mistake, that the scholars and the students of knowledge, they relied on what was wrongly attributed to these different groups. And we may not support a particular group, but at least from insaf and objectivity is that we attribute to them what belongs to them. And we make sure that what we attribute to them is from, has evidences, is from their sources. So they also meant the same meaning of doubt, which is creative doubt. You may disagree with them, but they did not mean the normal doubt. So those who refuted Mu'tazila, they did not understand. And it's always, the polemics is usually based on lawazim. You have an opinion which may have its meaning, but the opponent takes it in a different meaning, and that meaning is wrong, and he refutes this opinion based on that meaning. Okay, the scholar who has this opinion may say, well, I don't mean this. When I use this term, I meant something else. You have taken it on a wrong meaning and refuted me based on that wrong meaning, which I did not claim. Okay, so Imam al-Jahid, we will read this statement. It's a lengthy statement. We read it, inshallah, in the next session. But he has quoted some of his scholars. As I said, in the Mu'tazila thought, we have mainly two strands of thought, or two main groups of Mu'tazila. We have the Mu'tazila of Basra and the Mu'tazila of Baghdad. And they disagreed in many matters. Some of them agreed in many matters and masail with Ahlul Sunnah. So this must be taken into consideration. The teachers of al-Jahid are from the Mu'tazila of Basra, Abu Hudayl al-Allaf, and his student, the famous Abu Ishaq al-Nadham. And if you read Usul al-Fiqh, you may read his name in the books of Usul. For example, in Ijma', you will see Nadham rejected Ijma'. Nadham was a Mu'tazili. Listen to this. This is very profound, very relevant to our times. Jahid, in his book Al-Hayawan, he says, in explanation of the doubt, he says, قال أبو إسحاق النظام. My teacher, Al-Nadham, said, نازعت من الملحدين الشاك والجاحدة. I had arguments from mulhideen, from atheists or agnostics, whatever you call them, because Mu'tazila were on the forefront in refuting the mulhideen, in the atheists, or the zanadiqa, those who rejected Islam and created doubts about Islam in the Muslim society. They were on the forefront in refuting those, because their methodology was based on aql, so they understood it better. He says, An-Nadham says, famous Mu'tazili, نازعت من الملحدين الشاك والجاحد. I have argued with both from mulhideen, from the atheists, both shak, the doubters, and the one who doubts, shak, wal jahid, and the negators. So he divides mulhideen into two types: those who have doubts and those who negate. So their rejection, both are rejecting the truth, but there is difference between rejecting based on doubt and rejection based on juhud, based on desires, based on negating. فوجدت الشاك أبصر بجوهر الكلام من أصحاب الجهود. I found that those who reject based on doubts, the doubters, they are more near, or they have more knowledge of truth than those who are rejecting the truth because of their desires. Juhud. So he differentiates between juhud and shak. And we can use the same method in argumentation in our times. There are people who have doubts, and if you give them valid evidences, you clear their doubts, they will come to haqq. And there are people who just want to negate. So every argument is not necessarily based on valid, rational evidences. There are arguments which are based on the psychology of a person, nafs, his nafs, nafsiyah. So all arguments are not aqliyah. There are arguments which are nafsiyah. We must differentiate between them. This happens when Islam is refuted in our times, doubts are created. In Muslim societies also, we're exposed to doubts, different ideologies. We think all arguments are valid, and we start engaging with it, and we don't reach anywhere. Sometimes we make our stance more weaker. All arguments are not valid. There are many arguments based on nafs of a person. So he's saying this not because he has a valid doubt or a valid argument. He's saying because of his desire. You cannot clear that desire. So we must differentiate. Like the argument of Iblis. When he argued with Allah and said, he was justifying his disbelief. He was justifying his disobedience. When Allah asked him, why didn't you bow to Adam, alayhi salam? He said, because I'm better than him. You have created me from fire and you have created him from clay. Fire is better than clay. This is an argument which is based on qiyas. And qiyas is a profound methodology of rational argumentation. But did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala argue with Iblis? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refute his argument? Allah could refute. Allah didn't refute. Allah said, you have become accursed. Because this is not a valid argument. Who told you that fire is better than clay? This qiyas, the analogy, is invalid analogy. It's not a valid analogy. Okay. And the same is the case with a person, al-Dubai, who used to create in the times of Umar radiallahu anh, whenever they would go for a jihad, he would create doubts. He would discuss strange matters while they would be in the journey for pastime. And this became a problem. Some Muslims, they started getting confused about their religion, and he was summoned by Umar radiallahu anh. Umar did not discuss with him. Umar did not ask him his doubts and let's discuss, let us debate. He did not do that. Umar punished him. Umar punished him on his head. He beat him on his head. And there's another narration that Abu Bakr would also do it with people who would have invalid doubts and confusions. He would beat them on the head. And he would say, Shaitan has creeped into your head, into your aql. So you need a beating. They were capable. They were great scholars. They studied their religion with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, gifted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mulham, ilham would come to Umar radiallahu anh. He did not discuss. Because this person did not have valid arguments. Every argument is not valid. Differentiating between arguments, evidences based on aql, valid. They may be wrong, but validity is at least a basic condition. And arguments based on nafs, nafsiyah. He has quoted his teacher, al-Nadham. He has quoted another saying of the same scholar. وقال, he also said, al-Shakk aqrabu ilayka min al-Jahid. Shakk, the one who doubts, is more near to you than the one who bases his rejection of truth on juhud, on negation. He does not have valid doubts and arguments. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ يَقِينٌ قَطُّ حَتَّى كَانَ قَبْلَهُ شَكٌّ. And now this is important. Certainty cannot be achieved until, or there was no yaqeen, there is never certainty until shak precedes it. So shak, doubt, comes before certainty. No one can reach certainty before doubt. So those who reach certainty, they cross this path of doubt. وَلَمْ يَنْتَقِلْ أَحَدٌ مِنْ اِعْتِقَادٍ إِلَى اِعْتِقَادٍ. This intiqal min i'tiqad ila i'tiqad, Imam al-Maziri, I think, has taken it from al-Nadham. And no one has ever shifted from one belief to a better belief, ila i'tiqadin ghayrahu, hatta yakuna baynaha halu shak, until there was a condition of doubt between the two beliefs. No one shifts from a belief to a better belief, or understanding better evidences of the same belief, except there is a condition of shak between them. He has quoted another Mu'tazili mutakallim, Amr ibn Ubayd. He says, تَقْرِيرُ لِسَانِ الْجَاحِدِ أَشَدْ مِنْ تَعْرِيفِ قَلْبِ الْجَاهِلِ. Explaining the truth to a jahid, to a negator, is more difficult than explaining the truth to the heart of an ignorant, to a doubter. So they differentiate between shak and juhud. There are other sayings. We will read them inshallah in the next session. These are the 7 meanings of doubt which we can understand from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said, نحن أحق بالشك من إبراهيم. We have more right on doubt, or we deserve to doubt more than Ibrahim alayhi salam. He did not mean the doubt which is rejection of truth, but he meant the productive and the creative doubt which takes us to ilm, research, science, knowledge, and tranquility and certainty. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who understand their religion and apply it in their lives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten our uqul with the nur of wahi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from mistakes in ilm and amal. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant barakah in Sha'ban and take us to Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala best in dunya and akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his beautiful names and exalted attributes to cure our sick and to forgive all our dead. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabi al-ummi. See you in the next session bi'idhnillah. In the next session, we will talk about René Descartes and how he developed this method, how it proved useful for the Western Renaissance. And we will do a comparison, a brief comparison between him and Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.